Good morning. I'm so happy to be back. I didn't recognize the doors. I wasn't sure if I was in the right place. Those are beautiful doors. I opened the doors and I felt the love and I knew I was home. So Julie, I had known Julie for a few years. We used to party together a lot. And she was just beautiful. And so one Sunday she came with my friends Tony and Joey. And I attract the fringe people because they're like me, the musicians and the artists and those kind of people. So I was really grateful that she stayed and became such an integral part. It was so beautiful to watch her grow as part of this community. It just did my heart so much good. There are some people that suggest that when we pass on, that what happens is we're surrounded by these loving beings, and they help us to review our lives, but not in a way like a slideshow. Instead, you're with them, and you're made to experience everything you made everyone else feel. You know what I mean? So anytime you were mean to somebody, you feel exactly what they felt. Anytime you were loving to somebody, you feel that too. So guess what Julie's feeling today? She's feeling love. She's feeling nothing but love. She's feeling, every time, just that huge smile. Hey, Randy, just like so happy to see her. So I'm going to go off my script here. Play a little song for her. This is a drone flute. So I'm going to play one side that's going to represent Julie. Then I'm going to play the drone that's going to represent all of us. That's for you, Julie. I came across this beautiful quote some years ago that really has always stuck with me, and I think it's applicable to the theme that we've been having this month here at CSL. It's by Gahil Gibran, and it says, "I've learned silence from the talkative, tolerance from the intolerant, and kindness from the unkind. Yet strange, I am ungrateful to all these teachers." So there were these two monks. They were traveling around India, and they came across this young woman, very wealthy woman, in her sedan chair. And she was being carried along by her attendees and servants, and it had rained quite a bit, the monsoon season, so there were these really deep puddles. And so she wanted to get to the other side of the street, but all of her attendees, their hands were full with bags, from Prada or wherever they shopped back then. So she said, "I need to get over there," and she was very impatient, very irritated. So this one was the younger monk. He walked by and he just kind of hurriedly made his way past her. And the older monk stopped, picked her up, put her on his back, carried her to the other side of the street. And when she got to the other side of the street, she shoved him out of the way and just dismissed him. So they were walking about 3 hours later, and the young monk, he's getting, he's making that kind of irritable noises. So the older monk says, "Is there something you'd like to express, young monk?" And he says, "Well, that woman, she was so rude to you. She didn't even thank you. How could you help her? How could you stop to pick her up?" And he looks at the younger monk and says, I let her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? You get my point, right? It feels good to let go, to let go when we feel slighted, when things aren't quite going our way, but not when other people tell us to let go and to move on. I know when I was, grieving after the loss of my partner, everybody just said, "Oh, you're still grieving? Why aren't you moved on? You should just get over it." Boy, that's the last thing you should tell someone when they're grieving, let me just say. So, letting go is a daily process. Letting go is a moment-by-moment process. Letting go whenever somebody cuts in front of you or gets in front of you at the post office, wherever, and you're holding on to that. So letting go is a moment-by-moment process. So I'd like to all of us to let go right now. And the way we do that, this is what I do all the time. I do it audibly. I sigh audibly. So I take a deep breath and I go, ah. So let's all do that. Come on, please. Just sort of breathe in. Ah, let go. One more time, let it go. Doesn't that feel good to just let go? Well, when we do that, it's not that we are forgetting or whitewashing what may have happened to us, but what it means that we're protecting ourselves from the corrosive effects of staying stuck. We're refusing to dim our own light. And we really are, the theme this month is being a center of God's activity. And in my experience, we are already centers of God's activity. Just being here, we've won the proverbial lottery. Being on this little earth that just happens to be the right space from the sun, and there's this big Kuiper belt that's protecting us from the big asteroids. Although there's one coming next week that's going to be, what was it? 20, it's like 20, I think 3 million miles away. So it's pretty close in, cosmic terms, but it's all good. So with each breath, with each thought, with each feeling, with each action, we do express God as life, God as love, God as action, God as thought, and especially God as intention. I like to think that we're prisms of divine light, and that this light, our light, is meant to shine. So even before Isaac Newton and the Romans and Joseph von Fraunhofer, before they knew about rainbows and before they invented the telescope and the prism, the Aborigines had stories of the rainbow serpent. Native American stories, and I'm going to end with one, all talked about the qualities of the rainbow, how the rainbow came into being. The analogy of different human races and people being together as a rainbow, to me, is especially fitting. It's fitting to us as metaphysicians, as mystics, who see beyond the limited human physical qualities that we have, and beyond our limited human vision, which only can really capture about 200 things at one time, as opposed to a spider that has 8 eyes and can see different spectrums. So we often see our sameness, as connected by divine light or by spirit, or as I see it, by love. Shakti Gawain, she has this beautiful quote, and it says, "The more light you allow within you, the brighter the world you live in will be." And of course, Marianne Williamson, one of my favorite authors who wrote A Return to Love, she says, "The light in you is an unalterable truth of who you are. You can deny it or obscure it, but you cannot uncreate it." And that goes in perfectly to the message the passage Bob read, that there's a quality to us that cannot be destroyed, that has always been there, that cannot be undone. Or as Marianne Williams says, you cannot uncreate this light. Do any of you know who Richard Rohr is? Well, he is a really cool dude. He's a Franciscan. He runs the Center for Contemplation and Spirituality up in Albuquerque. And he has these groups that meet, and I receive his daily wisdoms and his daily teachings. It's Richard Rohr, R-O-H-R. Well, he talks about in 1969, he was assigned to Acoma Pueblo. He was a deacon there, and his job was, part of his job then was to take the census. And so he had this little old beat-up orange pickup truck, And he would go to all of the pueblos, and he would do a census, and he would go, well, it's New Mexico, so he went as early as possible. And he said he would drive up to like Acoma Pueblo where he was, and then he would stop because early in the morning, the first thing in the mornings, he would always see a mother out there, maybe a grandmother, with children, and she would be doing this. She and the kids would all be doing this. They would scoop up the day, and then they would scoop it up and then just pour it over them. And he said they would just do that over and over and just pour the day over them. And so he looked at that and he thought how silly it was to think that we Franciscans brought religion to New Mexico 400 years later, 400 years, previously. I love that image. I love that idea of scooping up the day, of just taking whatever divine has given us, whatever. We all know that we co-create our day, right? I mean, that's who we are. We co-create. And what a great thought to think you're just scooping it up. So I'm going to ask you to be all silly and weird, okay? Because Randy's camera's broken today, so he's not filming us. So, all right, let's do it. Let's scoop up the day. Come on, scoop it up, scoop it up. Oh, just pour it over you. Doesn't that feel good? Oh, just keep on. That's all right. That's all good. So think about this. When our animal kin, as I like to call them, when they come across a problem, any kind of situation in their environment, what they do is they broadcast that. They just think, I need another finger, or I need, maybe a longer tail, or I need bigger teeth, or sharper claws to climb the trees. Well, guess what happens? They think it, and successive generations automatically adapt to that. I'm doing a full moon concert at White Sands tonight at 8 o'clock. Please come out. There's these little white lizards there. They're called the earless lizard, I think. I call them the white geckos. I don't know. They could, like that little creature from the commercials. But they're so cute. You don't even notice them until you see something move, and you see this little white gecko, and they're doing the little push-ups, that the lizards do. And I love that they're so specialized, that they've adapted to be in that environment. They've adapted perfectly into that environment. Well, the same thing happens to us as humans. I like to think there's something that loves us so much that keeps the 2,000 gallons of blood pumping through our bloodstream each day, that keeps us while we sleep from acting out our dreams. Whenever Reverend Bonnie spoke, she was talking about some violent dreams she had. So, I'm really glad she wasn't able to act out on those. No. And so how lucky are we that even while we sleep, that our biological processes are going. Now, some people say, oh, that's just biological processes. It's just a matter of chemicals and hormones. Maybe so. But who made those chemicals and hormones? You know what the word biology means? Study of life. Hello. So that's just my thoughts. So we co-create every single experience with spirit, with this unknown, what Ernest Holmes called this unknown substance. He said, we have access to this unknown substance that receives our impressions, our intentions, our feelings, and our thoughts, and that's how we co-create things. That's why, there's that old joke of, there's this man, and he's talking to God. He says, hey, God, what's $1 million to you? God says, it's but a mere penny, my child. That's my God voice. And so he says, wow. So God, what's a second to you? And he says, it's 1,000 years. And says, God, can I have a penny? And God says, in a second. So co-creating. Sometimes it takes a little longer based on our intention and our understanding of it. So with our unconscious and our conscious thoughts and feelings, we literally co-create every single experience. Regular meditation helps with that because I like the Tibetan idea of what meditation is. The symbol for meditation is gom, and the translation is to become the observer of. So in other words, meditation for them is witnessing your thoughts. I like to imagine that there are clouds in the sky, or that there are flotsam and jetsam on the river that I'm navigating, or on a calm stream that I may be going down. So by observing our thoughts, we realize who we are. We realize what occupies our subconscious. Better said, there's this author named Timber Hawkeye, and he wrote this book called Buddhist Boot Camp, which I would highly recommend. This is what he says. He says, "The best advice I've ever been given was not to believe everything I think, and that feelings are not a fact." So, to not believe everything I think and that feelings are not fact. So we really literally have a choice to respond or to move on at any given time. And to think, I can make myself peaceful or I can make myself miserable. It's a second-by-second choice, so why not choose peaceful? Or as the song this morning says, why not choose to be happy? When they told me the song they were doing, I thought they were doing another happy song, but there's a lot of happy songs which are really good. I thought it was the REM song, Randy, but it's all good. I love that one. So the Dalai Lama himself, he says, if our emotions fluctuate wildly and we easily give into hatred and jealousy, even our friends, virtual and in real life, I'll add, will avoid us. So too often we become victimized by our emotional reaction to others. And when that happens, we're left feeling disempowered and angry and disconnected from love and floating in what I call a reactionary current. And it's easy to react. I purposely don't watch the news. I don't listen to the news in the morning. First thing I do is meditate, then I go for a walk in the desert. That's all the news I need to hear. Oh, look what the hawk's doing. Oh, they got a rabbit finally. Oh, that lizard died, and that kind of thing. And it works for me. But you have to, of course, find your balance. Ernest Holmes, let me try to get to this story quickly. Ernest Holmes writes about in The Art of Life about this man from England that came to him when he was out teaching at a sanitarium out in California. And this man was very successful. He was an architect and a designer, and he said, I'm miserable. I'm so unhappy. And so for some reason, Ernest Holmes ended up driving him to his house in his car. Come on over. And this man just unloads and says, I'm so unhappy, and I'm terrified by my own anxiety. I'm victimized by it. So Ernest Holmes worked with him over a series of a few months, actually. And what it came to light was that this man hated his older brother. Who knows why? But he thought he had forgiven and forgotten. He thought he had moved on, but he clearly hadn't. So Ernest Holmes was able to show him that this was the source of the restriction that was happening. And he told him, peace rises from the depths of one's being. When confusion, hate, and resentment are dissolved, that's when peace rises. So this guy surrendered what was opposing the life and the love and the peace. And he went back to England, and he made up with his brother, and all was good. So in other words, we have to find out, do you have friends who every time you see them, they tell the same story about why they're not happy? Well, if this, if that, or why they're miserable, or why they're poor, or that kind of thing. Because we like telling those stories, don't we? Because then that way we can kind of justify why we're not living to the fullest expression of who we're supposed to be. We came here. Believe it or not, no matter what your parents tell you, you're not an accident. None of you were an accident. We're not transients here waiting for the ticket to somewhere else. No, we're meant to experience and express contrast, like Abraham Hicks is always talking about, that beautiful contrast that we give ourselves the opportunity to come and experience. When we allow the divine love to shine through the prism of our understanding, I like to say, through the prism of our heart, we return to love, our true nature, and our home. Because life is both the giver and the gift, a perfect unit. And as the late prophet Leonard Cohen said, love is the only engine of survival. Bless you, Leonard. So, how does it feel when I tell you to just love everyone? Good for you. Anybody else? Any restriction? But you don't know, Randy. You don't know my brother. Oh, yeah, I do. You don't know my cousins. You don't know my mom. Right. So it's good to ask ourselves and to feel where we're feeling any restriction. I've learned, like the quote that I opened with said, I've learned silence from the talkative, tolerance from the intolerant, kindness from the unkind, yet strange I am ungrateful to all these teachers. The point of that is everyone is our teacher that we have put in our own path, in our own life. We've written our own book, and guess the characters we wrote in? Those people who give us the most grief. Ernest Holmes, at one point, he talks about, he always said things in such a scholarly and casual way, but he was essentially saying, all the trouble in our life is caused by other people, So we think, well, if only other people would all be gone, then I'd be happy. No, you wouldn't, because then who could you share things with? Who could you share the triumphs and the sadness and all the feelings that we're feeling about Julie? We need each other. We're a community. We're not accidents. It's not accidental that we're here as a collective species figuring this stuff out. The earth has her own path too, her own spiritual life. So do our animal kin. So do the cosmos. So does everything in existence. Life, I love to watch science movies because I see the variety of life, like these ants that spit acid at their enemies, and I'm thinking, how long did it take them to figure that out, How do I get that? No, I'm just kidding. Well, you're never going to suffer from loving too much. Hating too much, you will. It's going to cause you all kinds of chaos and disease and drama. But loving too much is never going to hurt you. It's only going to help you. It's only going to help those around you. So to see every single person as God sees them, to be an example of that unconditional love, it's not easy, but you wouldn't be here if you wanted the easy path. You want the challenging path. You want to learn. I want to learn. There's this great quote that I came across the other day, and it said, you never know whose eyes God is watching you out of, and it's not going to be who you think it is. And to quote Carl Jung, of course, he says, as far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. I just love that. So I'm going to end with a Native American story from the Achumawi people. They were the people up in northeastern California. This is a story of how the rainbow first came to be, and it involves manifestation. It involves people working together. So I'm going to try to get through it kind of quickly. And I've asked a few people when I indicate if they're going to join in on, well, you'll see. So 60 little spider children shivered as they slept. Snow had fallen every day for months. All the animals were cold and hungry. It seemed like winter would never stop. Blue jay and the wren and the redhead woodpecker were all singing to the silver gray fox that lives up there, who created everything. But Creator wasn't listening. It continued to be cold. The people continued to be hungry. Finally, the animals said, let's ask Coyote. Coyote's been around a while. He knows a lot of things. So they go to Coyote's den and they say, hey, Coyote, we have this issue. Do you think we can get silver gray fox to listen to us, to bring summer back? And Coyote goes, go away, But he eventually gets up and he says, let me think about it. So Coyote's thinking about it, and then he sees Spider Woman. She's kind of hanging from the tree, coming down from the tallest tree, and he says, Spider Woman's been around the longest out of anybody, so I'm going to ask her. And so she says, well, I have an idea, but it's going to require all of us. I can't do this by myself, so we all need to get in and help. We're all cold and we're all hungry. So she says, let me think of a plan. So her 8 little black eyes sparkled, and she says, I know how to do it, but it's going to require all of us and the 2 of my youngest 60 children. The 2 of my youngest, because they're fast and they're light as dandelion fluff, and so they'll be able to really help. So she calls them, spin, spin, and they come down, and then she says, you want to go on an adventure? They're like, yeah. that sounds great. So Spider-Woman told them what the plan was. And then they came across these two white-footed mouse brothers who were looking for some seeds to eat. And she told them the plan. Will you help? They said, of course. And then they traveled up the trail to Mount Shasta, and they met Weasel Man, and he was skinny and looking really hungry. And they said, will you help? He said, of course I'll help. And then all of a sudden, Red Fox Woman came swishing with her big fluffy tail. She said, I'll help. And then little Rabbit Woman comes out of her hole and says, I'll help too. She has a cold from even though her fur is really thick, she's cold. So Meadowlark wrapped a winter shawl around her wings and trudged with the others up to Mount Shasta. The snow stopped, but the sky was still cloudy. So on the top, Coyote barks and says, well, the two best archers step forward, and the two white-footed mouse brothers come proudly with their bows ready. He says, everyone listen to me. If any of us is only half-hearted in this attempt, Spider-Woman's plan is not going to work. So we all have to give it everything that we possibly can. Now, we must combine our powers and our thoughts and our dreams and our strength and our songs. Now, will you white-footed mouse brothers, I want you to shoot 2 arrows right up to the sky at the same spot. So they certainly did it, and he turns to the little spiders, and he said, you need to start spinning silk as fast as you can. And so they started making this big ball of silk, getting ready to throw it up there. And so if my participants would join me. Good. Keep on going. And so Red Fox Woman and Rabbit Woman, they started to get their rattles and their drums and to make a really loud noise. And so with this noise and with the rattles and drums and their singing that they were doing, they lifted the little spiders up to the very top of the cloud, and they were up on top of the cloud, and they go yip, 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 and they were howling, and they were so happy, and they said, we did it, we did it, we did it. Keep on going. You're awesome. So the little spiders got up to the very top of the cloud, and so Silver Gray Fox sees them, and he says, what are you doing here? And he says, we've come up because people are cold and hungry, and our mother is Spider-Woman. She told us we had to come up and ask you to bring the sky back, bring the summer back so we can eat again and be warm. How did you get up here, he says. And he says, listen, do you hear that? We were carried along by the sound and the prayers and the chants and the drums of everyone down on earth. And he says, I'm happy when creatures use their power, and I'm especially glad to hear that Coyote is helping too. Coyote was the real reason that he left in the first place. We know Coyote. He says, to reward all your hard work, I'm going to create a sign to show that the skies will clear and you too may help. Okay, thank you. So this is what he says. First picture of the sun shining bright. And so they concentrated really hard, and they saw the sun's rays. And he says, now, where the sun meets the damp air, I want you to picture a stripe of red like woodpecker's head, and then a stripe of blue like the blue jay. And then they thought very hard, and then they saw up in the sky these two bands. And then he said, now I want you to visualize orange and yellow and green. The spider boys thought really hard, and before their eyes, a bright, beautiful arc of colors curved across the whole sky and the clouds. It was the very first rainbow. Meanwhile, down below, the people had stopped. You know, the Spider-Woman and everyone, they kind of gave up. It's been a long time. They were really hungry. They were cold. They all blamed Coyote. Coyote, tail between his legs, goes back to his den. And so Silver Gray Fox says, you know, you did what I asked and you kept it secret, and I know how hard that is. So to reward you on special mornings when it's wet, when the sun starts to shine, you're going to see what I mean. So then the Spider Boys ran back to Earth, and the Spider-Woman is just all her 8 legs are just hugging them, and their 58 brothers and sisters are jumping all over them and just screaming in their spider screams. And then when they tell their story, they said, look up. And everyone looked up. And there, bridging the sky to Earth in a radiant arc, was the very first rainbow. And so they all began to sing, and when meadowlarks sing, the grass started to come up, the leaves started to come back, the fruit and the vegetables and the nuts and berries all started to come back so they could sing. Coyote climbed to the top of the hill, and he just sang his beautiful song, howling with joy. So they worked together. And so to this day, after a rain, when the sun comes out, you can see the dewdrops on the spider's web. I know you've all seen it, right? You ever notice there's a rainbow in each little drop? Well, that's because they learned to work together. So thank you, and so it is.